Hops balls taste delicious, short shorts are not in any way fashionable, and modern guns are basically just plastic Mattel toys that should be burned in a pile and melted into Legos that shoot out of flintlock pirate pistol cannons because that's clearly the most effective carry gun on earth. I, James Reeves, swear all this to be true in my will and testament before God and the gun Jesus. Whew, God. Also, I'm homosexual for deer. How can you be homosexual for deer? What if it's a female deer? That just makes you weird, not gay.
Quote, night vision is overrated and a waste of money. The most important thing about a handgun is how light the trigger is. If you spend less than $2,000 on a carry gun, you'll get killed in the streets. Civilians shouldn't be able to own AR-15s, they should just buy Mini 14s instead. Same thing with armor and plate carriers. Just wear 4 to 5 winter coats and that'll stop 9mm and 5.56 out past 100 yards. Also, I pooped my pants and am still wearing the pants I pooped in. Appreciate that.
Hey gang, welcome to the hotly anticipated conclusion of the father-son budget build-off. To recap, Hop and I budgeted $1,250 to build the ultimate budget AR in the first video. My build was a modern 1-in-8 twist gun with a free-float M-lock handguard, LaRue match trigger, and a 3x prism optic with an offset red dot, while Hop built a budget relic from OEF by Palmetto State Armory. I said we'd decide the winner by whose gun fetched the most on Gunbroker, and that was me.
I mean, I still feel poor just holding this thing. God, Ryan, watch the camera, you idiot.
While my rifle got almost $3,000 in fake bids, the last legitimate bidder was $1,900 to Hop's $1,850, however, secretly. I didn't want money to be the only deciding factor, so I posted a People's Choice viewer poll as well. The winner gets internet prestige and the most money for his gun. The loser has to read the worst comment about him from our last video. Hop and I both lost in a lot of ways now that I think about it. Hundreds of thousands of views on the video, but only like 300 votes on the poll. And I'm also convinced that most of the people who voted just voted for the Pacific Northwestern Poor Lord M4 without actually watching the video. While my rifle took the auction, Hop's took the People's Choice poll with 2/3 of the vote. Really proud of Hop, disappointed in you, the viewer, mainly the people who voted in that poll, and I'll explain today. But before we get into that shit sandwich, there are way too many people in the comments whose minds were blown that you could call an all-in $1,250 complete gun, including optics and accessories, a budget build. Well, you better believe it, bitch, because Hop and I kind of know what we're doing, and neither of our rifles is very good for that much money. Perhaps worse were the guys who said they could have done better for less. No. Could we have built these guns cheaper? Yeah, but I'm not sure that many of you understand that line, kind of where budget build ends and unusable dog shit begins, but maybe we'll test that out in a future video, huh? Speaking of unusable dog shit, here's Hop's roast.
Hey guys, I'm out here with the official James Reeves Babar, the best at being average rifle. That's I think what he was going for with that name. I did not get to see this while I was building my own submission for the contest, so I didn't have much to go on other than the agreed upon ground rules of the competition. Which apparently we did not agree on well enough because James Reeves didn't realize that the competition requires a weapon light. So he's disqualified immediately just for forgetting that part. Oh well. I had a theory going into this that he was going to overspend on his optics and it was going to cause the rest of his rifle to suffer. I was correct about that. However, I thought he was going to go for an LPVO. It's really difficult to get an LPVO, at least a decent one, and a mount in on the budget we were working on. So, turns out he went with 2 optics instead, which is how come he was still able to overspend himself on the optics even though he didn't go for an LPVO. So there are 3 ways that we can evaluate this build. 1 is just the base rifle, 2 is the upgrades, and 3 is the aesthetics. We're going to work in reverse order of importance, starting with aesthetics. It doesn't look so good, bro. You've kind of got like a weird billet upper aesthetic going on, but not a billet lower, so it's mismatched, and not so great. He at least did match the color and brands of the furniture. I was really worried he wasn't going to do that. So just aesthetically speaking, mine obviously wins because mine has some really cool, you know, post GWAT, you know, like early ARFCOM kind of vibes to it. Whereas this just, I don't know, man. This looks like somebody's first ever Reddit r/guns post to me. But that doesn't really matter. Aesthetics is very, very much not the most important thing on a defensive carbine. So let's talk about the actual rifle itself. The lower, it's just a lower. There's nothing exciting going on there. He did upgrade the trigger, which is a nice choice. Not necessarily a good thing to spend money on, but I chose to spend money on it, and so did James. Obviously, we were thinking about, you know, kind of the same thing there. This is a LaRue MBT2S, meticulously built trigger, 2-stage. MBT2S. Which is, yeah, as much trigger as you can get for the money, essentially. That or the Schmid 2-stage. They're extremely affordable and way better than a stock trigger, and basically as good as like a $400 Geisley trigger. So, good choices there, James. As far as the upper goes, this is where it all starts to fall apart. This is a 16-inch carbine gas heavy barrel upper, which is very strange, and it's mated to again, a billet upper receiver. I think it's billet or just billet style. Either way, gross, which omits a forward assist. Now, I'm not going to be militant about the forward assist one way or the other, but I would just say might as well keep it on there. Thank God he at least kept the dust cover. So, could be worse. But 16-inch carbine gas, heavy barrel. Obviously, there wasn't enough money in the budget for really high-end optics to take advantage of a heavy barrel. Moreover, you know, it's a defensive carbine, theoretically, right? Building a practical gun on a budget, so precision of a heavy barrel does not really match up with your fighting optics stack here, James. I did shoot some groups out of this, but it's very difficult for me to hold groups with a 3-power prism optic with the chevron reticle. So if you just compare, for example, I shot it next to a 16-inch pencil barrel AR with a 6-power optic that produced significantly better groups. I don't think that has anything to do with the barrel per se. I think it's just me, the shooter. A 6-power optic is way easier for me to shoot groups with. So the accuracy potential of that heavy barrel is kind of going to waste. It's also carbine gas, which is just a fucking antique at this point. And something about this gun, it is one of the most explosively overgassed ARs I've ever shot. This thing shoots really badly. James was thinking ahead, and he did include an H1 buffer to go along with it to hopefully, you know, smooth out the recoil impulse. Didn't work. Honestly, I swapped it back for the carbine buffer, and I feel like it shot a little better with the carbine 3-ounce buffer versus an H1 buffer. Either way, whoever unlucky son of a bitch buys this rifle is getting both of those buffers. And one thing that they'll notice when they unbox this thing is that both of those buffers have chatter marks around the outside ring. Because something about this gun is out of spec. My theory is that it's this special billet upper is out of spec, so it's causing the interface between the back of the bolt carrier group and the buffer. They're not touching, so when the system slams back home, the bolt carrier group is going too far forwards, and that means that the buffer is slamming into the buffer retaining pin. So it puts marks around the perimeter of the buffer as it starts to wear, and what that means is that eventually this thing is going to destroy the buffer retaining pin. It's going to break off inside the lower, and it's going to make the gun jam up. When that happens, it's not the end of the world. You've probably seen this. I think In Range did this for a long time. Just pull that shit out. You know, it's a little harder to get the gun back together because you kind of got to squeeze it as you're closing the upper, but you can still get it together, and it will still run just fine without the buffer tube retainer. But not a very encouraging sign that something on this thing is out of spec. Either the upper or the lower buffer retaining pin hole. Something is causing that to happen, and it's not a good sign. So, how about the way that Mr. James Reeves set this thing up? He has some very tasteful choices on here. We have a very normal, long M-LOK handguard. Very good. It's lightweight. Accessory points, that's fine. Don't really care. A2 birdcage flash hider. Perfectly acceptable choice. Nothing wrong with that. Furniture choices are a little questionable. He's got an MOE grip, which is fine. He matched the colors, which is good. My OCD appreciates that. But he used the Magpul SLK stock. This is one of the worst stocks on the market. It does not natively have a very good sling attachment points. You can kind of run it through here as like a footman's loop style, but I don't know. I try using a sling that way for a while. I cannot imagine you're going to like it. It's basically You can set it up so that it's extremely comfortable when the gun is slung, or you can set it up coming out the other direction so that it's relatively comfortable when you're shouldering the gun, but it does not play very well as compared to a sling swivel. So if this is a Magpul CTR stock, Magpul SL stock, then the sling integration would be much better, but it's not. It's the SLK, one of my least favorite stocks on the market. Other than that, he has also upgraded, if you can call it that, the charging handle for a Strike Industries T-Bone. These are supposed to be sort of suppressor optimized because they can jet the gas out one way or another. I don't think that really works. This is a latchless charging handle, so it is ambidextrous even though it doesn't have any moving parts. Not bad, not much of an upgrade, not a great place to spend money in my opinion. But where it all really comes down to it is in the optics stack. James Reeves went ham on the optics. He got a Primary Arms SLX 3X microprism with an offset Holosun 407. Quite the capable optics setup. These microprisms are really extremely usable. Not a whole bunch of magnification, but just a little bit of magnification. Very useful to have, particularly if we're going for a 16-inch anyway. You might as well have some magnification on there. And the offset red dot is, you know, I'm not a huge fan of offset red dots, but if you put the work in, you can get pretty effective at using the offset for up-close shots. And yeah, it's a rugged setup because there's nothing to move. These little microprisms are lightweight and very durable. And the mounting system, which is all from Primary Arms, is pretty darn rugged. So I wouldn't really be worried too much about that. He does have a sling for it. I just didn't bring it out here today. It's a Vickers Blue Force Gear padded sling with the metal buckles. So oof, boy, that's just messed up. Anyway, triple fail because we have a rifle that is configured a little bit strangely. 16-inch heavy barrel carbine gas. It's also out of spec, so it's destroying itself inside. That's a little weird. We have the bizarre aesthetic choice of a mixed and matched billet upper with forged lower. We also have the configuration choices of a little too much optic, not enough white light, terrible stock. So yeah, I think I'm going to claim the moral victory on this one. As far as the actual voting went, we asked people to vote with their wallets, which was a very terrible idea because most of those votes were fraudulent votes. So in theory, James won because his rifle did command a higher price on Gunbroker than mine did. However, that bid wasn't real. So who's to say? As far as the actual popular vote goes, I won that handily because my rifle is much better and looks much better, which is to be expected. Yeah, I mean, this is what I do, baby. James Reeves is out of his element, but I'm sure he'll come around someday.
It works.
So for the person who has to spend the rest of their life in possession of the James Reeves Babar, I'm sorry, that kind of sucks, dude. To the rest of you guys, thank you for watching. This series will probably continue with other challenges and interesting build ideas going forth, so James Reeves will no doubt tell you about those in the outro. Thank you for watching. See you guys next time.
All right, now it's Daddy's turn. Hop's build concept was noble. I went into a gun store with a blindfold and bought Babby's first AR, and I need to make it better now. I understand the Hop Mod concept, so much so that my first AR ever was nearly identical to Hop's build, but that was in 2004. The Clinton ban had just expired. I think Hop was 7. I finished nursing him. I went to a local gun show, bought a Bushmaster Patrolman's carbine, and I never came home. I slapped a Surefire drop-in quad rail, a Voltor stock, an EOTech 512 on top, which eventually became an Aimpoint Micro magnifier combo in 2007, and I installed a Pelican M6 and like a Zahal 1-inch flashlight mount. Pretty much exactly the same gun as Hop's build, except with higher quality parts. 20 years ago. About that same time, SOPMOD Block 1, which Hop's build is modeled after, was already on its way out as Block 2 was introduced in 2007. The SOPMOD M4 is a legendary system, serving extensively in the Middle East, probably punching more tickets for Terry's than any other carbine ever. But this is a concept that's literally older than Hop and probably most of you watching. So I'm glad to see, as the resident boomer here, that I got outboomed by Hop's 90s retro wave build and the viewers who voted for it. As someone who lived through the 90s, it wasn't that great. Cable TV was actually cable Phone service came out of a square hole in the wall. Chipotle didn't exist, and you had to pay money for porn. And drop-in Picatinny quad rails were still unironically a thing because there was nothing else. Ooh, I need to grab my jacket. Did you guys just get chilly all of a sudden? I feel a strong breeze in here. I think it's the winds of change blowing this rifle away. SOP mod was top tech in the 90s, but the future's now, bitch. In 2017, NSW Crane, essentially an incubator for Special Forces, tested KeyMod and M-LOK as potential replacements for the M4 Picatinny rail that was standardized back in '95 when Tupac was still alive. That study, which I'll link to below, found M-LOK to be the superior choice. M-LOK's lighter, it's smoother, it's more modular than PIC rail. Look, you served us well, PIC rail. You're allowed to keep optics mounting, and we'll even give you buttstock attachments. But your handguard days are over. The military is not only rapidly adopting M-LOK, but they're doing it in the form of full-length M-LOK rails mostly, as seen in the XM5, the SIG MCX Spear, the Mark 18 Res 3, the Surge program. This all sounds familiar, seems a lot like I did it with my build. Hop's 1250 build is an M4 with a drop-in quad rail, a SIG Romeo red dot, and Juliet magnifier, so why do I need a front sight post, especially if I don't have a rear sight? By itself, it's a lot like having a left shoe or a bachelor's degree, pretty much useless. The only bad kind of Glock is glaucoma, and that's what I thought I had whenever I got this gun out to the range, because the FSP, the front sight post, it makes a blurry silhouette that partially obfuscates the amorphous blob that this magnifier turns your red dot into. Not to mention, like Romeo said, Juliet's box is pretty tight. The Juliet magnifier from the SIG set has a very small and unforgiving eye box, meaning that your eye has to be really close to the optic to get a good sight picture. Oh, and the mount for the magnifier just popped right off when Ryan was using it out on the range, hilariously revealing this big old Made in China sticker underneath it, like a gag straight out of SpongeBob.
That's hilarious.
Hop made a great video on his channel about piggyback and offset red dots like I had on my build. In fact, my build was in that video. Now, either Hop didn't mention it or more likely I missed it, because the only thing I skip more than YouTube are my court-ordered anger management courses. But one huge benefit of offsets that magnifiers and LPVOs cannot touch is the fact that they're way faster than dialing down a magnified optic. And you don't need to take a hand off the gun to swap magnifications like you do with an LPVO. Say you have your LPVO dialed into 5x, or you've got your magnifier deployed and you need to swap to 1x, you're coon fingering something on top of your gun, bringing your support hand off the gun, possibly losing your sight picture, wasting time and accuracy. Not as much with an offset. It's faster, it's easier, you can use different zeros for your offset and for your main optic. My mindset for my optic setup was basically the Thunder Ranch Urban Rifle class. Thunder Ranch Urban Rifle, Clint has been teaching it since 1983, phenomenal course. You basically look at the AR or the Urban Rifle as something that's good from 10 yards to 500 yards and on the fly. Side note, a while back I actually ran an Urban Rifle course, like my third one or so, with a cheapo S&W AR, a Leupold Mark III HD with an offset red dot. Loved the optic setup, even if the rifle was okay. And for that matter, I love red dot magnifier setups. I've even got one, but I think a 1 point something to 4x, 5x, 6x, or whatever LPVO might be a better choice. Now, I'm not going to get twisted over the barrels, but that pesky technological progress rears its ugly head yet again, and I've got to bring it up. While I'm perfectly fine with a 1 and 7-inch chrome line barrel, you're starting to see more barrel manufacturers moving over to non-additive processes like nitriding. Great example, Ballistic Advantage, using 1 and 8 twist to stabilize more common projectile weights from like 50 to 77 grain. It's becoming a little bit more common. I've seen it evolve myself over the past couple of decades, and it makes sense to me. Look, chrome lining, 1 and 7 twist, it's probably still mil spec. It makes a lot of sense. It works, so this isn't a big deal to me. But then again, I kind of see where the market's heading, and it makes a lot more sense to me. All the complaining aside, you have to love the quad rail and FSP look. And after all, rule number 1 is always look cool, even if you're setting up a personal defense rifle. To be honest, I think I've probably used flimsier rationale than a 30-year-old government program to justify aesthetic decisions on my own rifles. So if you want a SOPMOD M4, get a SOPMOD M4 because of Call of Duty or Girls Frontline or whatever, go for it. At the end of the day, Hop and I have a lot in common with our builds. I've got to mention that neither he nor I discussed these builds in advance. We had no clue until we actually opened each other's rifles what the builds were like. I thought it was really funny because we were both seemingly of the same mindset. We both spread the money around to get the best possible feature set for the lowest amount of money. We had decent optics plugged into decent rifles instead of going whole hog on one or the other, which honestly isn't the worst idea. As I said in the first video of the series, if it were me, I would just buy the best possible AR for $1,250 with a good set of iron sights and a sling, and then I'd save up for a real optic later instead of trying to get the whole job done for $1,250, but I digress. We both went with a 16-inch build, which for legal and practical purposes is probably the best all-around length. Short enough to maneuver, but long enough that you get decent terminal performance and range out of the gun. We're on the same page when it comes to furniture, slings, trigger. These are easy, cheap upgrades that pay huge dividends. We stuck with the standard A2 flash hider, no need to change that. Back to triggers, Hop got the Payless Bobo off-brand Schmid trigger and saved 10 bucks. I got the name brand LaRue. That said, I'm pleasantly surprised at how good the Schmid triggers are for the price. For optics, we both gave ourselves a 1x option with a magnified option. I like my way better, the 3x prism with the offset, but my way was a lot more expensive, and in spite of my comments about the Juliet magnifier, I still think the Romeo and Juliet combo is actually really good for $350 MSRP, but don't forget to be ever so gentle with the magnifier mount when you're swinging it in and out. Hop did outthink me in a couple of places. One, Hop went with the regular USGI charging handle, actually kind of a smart move because he's right. Most of the time you are going to be reloading from an open bolt, so you don't need to use that charging handle all that often. I should have saved the money there and put it towards something else, but then again, I only spent 30 bucks for a Strike Industry charging handle, and it was worth every penny because Hop would rather give Hickok 45 a foot massage than own a Strike Industries part.
He has also upgraded, if you can call it that, the charging handle for a Strike Industries T-Bone.
Second, you boys dragged me over the lack of a flashlight. As someone who has scout lights with pressure pads or mod buttons on all of my defensive rifles, I totally get it, but this was more of a miscommunication than anything. When we set up the ground rules for the build, we said, you know what, let's exclude certain things, like for example, magazines and ammo. That would make the scope of the build way too broad, the scope of the video way too broad. I neglected to bring up lights. That's my bad. In my mind, we wouldn't be actually, clearing a house or using lights in this review, so I didn't even consider getting one. I just put it into the rifle. But having been on TFBTV long enough, I knew I was about to get PP slapped as soon as I opened Hop's rifle because people were going to say, oh man, James, are you saying you don't need a light? In reality, it's the total opposite. I think these are essential gear. I just didn't realize that it was within the scope of this video. Performance on the Hop mod, better than expected, honestly. Reliability was excellent. We ran probably a half case of ammo and 50 or 60 rounds shooting groups only. No issues whatsoever. Handling was great. The trigger was pretty clutch. The optics combo and the accuracy were kind of the weaker points of this build. The Romeo optic was a little bit on the dim side, even at full brightness, but at least in full sunlight, cranking it up all the way, it was still visible, so it's okay. The magnifier had so-so clarity with a really tight eye box, not to mention the involuntary quick disconnect feature. Take it or leave it, but again, it worked. Now about that accuracy thing. Ryan and I shot 10 5-shot groups at 100 yards with multiple types of ammo. We shot some good groups, but we also had either mechanical or practical accuracy issues with the setup.
Woo! Let's see how these groups were. Now bear in mind, guys, again, we're dealing with low magnification, kind of okay-ish entry-level optics, not exactly very sharp. I'm excited to see how we did with the Hop mod. All right, first group, this is me with Wolf Gold from inside to outside. We are looking at a nice little 3.8 inch group, not really that great. Ryan's first group, 2.9, again, not that great. Here's my third group, and outside to outside, 3.1. So we're looking at around 3 inches. And then here is the next group. This is with that steel match. Hornady steel match, 75 grain. That's a 2.4 inch group. Actually really respectable. And you're looking at a 3.1 inch group. Then here's Ryan's. Actually had 4. Ryan had 4 really tight in here. He's got a little flyer. So that brings the total to 3.2. So we're seeing a consistent pattern here. Either the PSA upper and barrel combo was a little bit fussy with ammo, or I guess there's an outside chance that the optic setup wasn't that great and it took us 8 groups to find the sweet spot with this poop tube magnifier. What I mean is that our first groups with Wolf Gold, M193, 55 grain, were over 3 inch groups. Not bad, but far from good. Now for the last 2 groups we shot, I busted out my favorite range ammo, which is Federal Varmint and Predator. For some reason, this stuff, it's like 50 grains, maybe 45. It always prints, and I think it's been the most accurate non-match ammo in 90% of our AR testing. It's really wild. Ryan's Varmint and Predator, and again, this effing Varmint and Predator, like I don't know what they put in this shit. That's a 1.6-ish inch group. And then here's mine, Varmint and Predator, and now you're talking a 1.4. Get a close-up of that there, right guy? And you know, that's like 1.3 something. With the right ammo, we had downright good grouping from this budget gun. So, not bad. So to summarize, neither of these guns is that great. Hop did a good job of showing you how to kind of glow up your first cheap AR, and he made a pretty sexy rifle, actually, if you ignore the fact that it's made by PSA, and it could put up good groups with the right ammo. I focused on where the future of the AR is headed with my build. I think we both did a pretty good job for the money. I felt like we both won. That is until we posted the video on YouTube.